Like many other humans on this planet, I have a gift that keeps on giving. Long COVID, although my personal flavor happens to be, well, a permanently altered sense of taste and smell. But technically speaking, I had long something long before I ever had COVID. You know, sometimes things just keep on giving long after the crisis is over. Hi, I'm Rick, and welcome to Slow the Down, your periodic podcast from a converted schoolie bus where we look at an intentional and focused life and sometimes try to figure out why we do the things that we really shouldn't do. So let's start with the question. What is long COVID? Well, I'm going to read you what the CDC has to say. Some people who have been infected with the virus that causes COVID-19 can experience long-term effects from their infection, known as post-COVID conditions or long COVID. Basically, some of the symptoms that you had while you had the disease, well, they just sort of show up or keep staying around long after the virus goes away. Now, these symptoms, they can range from mild to debilitating, and they can range from short-term to, well, seemingly forever for the rest of your life. But COVID isn't the only thing that can have long-term manifestations long after the original bout is over. Now, my particular type of long-term COVID is, well, altered taste and smell and also some brain fog. Although there is some debate as to whether, well, the brain fog is, well, because of COVID or not. I'm not exactly the let's stick with things and remember things often kind of guy. Now, my last confirmed case of COVID-19 was after a long night of debauchery back in Halloween of 2021. And for months after I recovered from that, I didn't experience any symptoms at all, right up until I ate a plate of French fries. Now, at first, I thought that particular establishment had served me something, well, that they shouldn't have, and perhaps I should call, health services to give them an inspection. I mean, they tasted rotten. It was like that taste that you've never tasted before, but that you've smelled. You know, sometimes you sniff around the air and you just know what it tastes like. Well, this was the case of 2-week-old rotting food in a really hot dumpster, and it wasn't good. It was like nothing I had ever tasted before. And unfortunately, it's something that I kind of taste often now. Now, I mentioned this at the time to the person who was sitting across from me. They tasted my fries and proclaimed that I was crazy, that the fries tasted completely normal. So naturally, I kind of jumped to the conclusion, maybe I'm having COVID again? Now, skip ahead a few weeks and many weeks of me not eating French fries, and I was having a burger with a piece of lettuce on it. And all of a sudden, I tasted the exact same foul, putrid taste. I actually dissected my entire meal at that point, taking bits and bites and everything, individual pieces. I wanted to know exactly what it was, and sure enough, it was the iceberg lettuce. But again, my brain just couldn't wrap itself around the fact that this wasn't COVID. I was just assuming that I was still relapsing or still having it. Now let's skip ahead even more weeks, and the final nail in the coffin finally hit me. I was sitting in the backyard, enjoying a bad habit that I know is bad for me, but I love to do anyway. I was smoking a fine cigar. Now, there is absolutely nothing like sitting out in the yard, sipping a little spiced rum, smoking a really good stogie, just to sort of calm your senses, take some time, enjoy the moment. But what I didn't expect was for it to instantly taste like rotting seaweed. Now, since multiple weeks had passed since these symptoms started appearing, I couldn't blame it on an active case of COVID. I had to admit the truth. I had long COVID. I had something that was going to keep on giving, keep on prolonging, and I had no idea how to stop it, and I had no idea how long it was going to last. Now, you would think this might be the end of the story, but we cannot end it here. Oh, no. We got to go on because there are other things that, well, they're kind of like long COVID, only worse. We interrupt this podcast just for a minute because I have a favor to ask of you. I want you to head over to rickhiggins.com, RICKHIGGINS.com. What's there, you may ask? Well, it's like a Rosetta Stone or a signpost at Grand Central Station. It tells you and shows you, well, everywhere that we are. And if you'll excuse me for a second, there is a fly in the studio right now that I have to kill because it's stopping me from talking to you about this. All right, I'm going to get it in real quick. We're on social media, we're on podcasts, we're on YouTube, we're on a whole lot of places. That site, rickhiggins.com, lists them all. What I want you to do is find what you and I have in common, where we exist on the same platform. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear comments, or even if you just use email, it's rick@rickhiggins.com. Because I want to learn more about you. I want to learn more about what kind of content I can make that can impact your life, that affects who you are, and that maybe can help you a little bit. And by contrast, maybe can help me a little bit too. So again, rickhiggins.com. And by the way, there's a newsletter out there also. Go sign up for it, and well, then you can have more words of wisdom in your email box about every 2 weeks. And well, I'm hoping they're words of wisdom. Then you can comment back and tell me if they are or not. Okay, so what if I can't smoke a cigar? And so what if I can't eat a plate of French fries? Yeah, going out to eat is a little difficult sometimes. I have to remember what to tell them not to put on my plate. But there are a million other possibilities on the menu that I can eat without having that rancid, nasty taste come into my mouth. There are a lot more possibilities, right? I mean, there are possibilities, except for those times when some new food decides to trigger those same taste, smell buds, and I get that whole sensation all over again, and I gotta add another new thing to the list. So as I was pondering this dilemma, this crossroads of do I avoid evil things like lettuce and potatoes, or do I seek out new and possible wonderful things? I realized that there were other conditions that happened in the past that can really screw up your present and your future. Like, for instance, have you ever heard of human imprinting? Okay, the technical definition is this: learning that occurs at a certain age that is independent of the consequences of behavior. That is human imprinting. But what it really means is that when you're a child, baby, preteen, even up into your 20s, your brain is still gooey, unformed, just a mass of random electrical wires just waiting for some electrician, somebody to come and kind of put it all together for you. Now enter society, your friends and family, your neighborhood. Everything that you were taught as the absolute truth as a wee person, and everything that you believed as a result of that input. And here's the thing. Once you're wiring, all of that stuff that we talked about, all that stuff that's packed in there and is now part of the new you, well, it's permanent. No amount of unlearning is gonna, unlearn what you've learned. It's in concrete. You can't get a chisel, you can't get a jackhammer, and you certainly can't get a wedge, because all that stuff, it's there for good. Which explains why decades later, while you're watching some video where yet another scientist is trying to tell the flat earthers that no, the earth is indeed this spheroid oblate semi-round thing circling this primary star, and they go, no, it's a flat earth. Well, you're going to believe the flat earth guys because your Uncle Bob, back when you were 4.5, told you that was true. And it burned in there, and a part of your brain is always going, I don't think it's round. It's probably flat like a pizza, blue and white pizza, with water falling off the edges, and maybe a big turtle holding it up on its back. Yeah, that's what your brain's going to tell you to believe. Now, why are you going to have this nonsensical debate in your head? Because human imprinting. That is what was put into your head when you were 4.5 by somebody who had knowledge, and they decided to insert it in you without your permission. You see, you're a smart person, you're intelligent, but yet this little voice, these little thoughts that are inside your head won't go away, and they're always going to pop up and go, ha, here's the truth, even though it's a complete and absolute fabrication and lie. So, what does this have to do with long COVID, you may ask? Well, hang on, because there is a big connection. Now, let's say that some random child who grew up in an environment where there was a lack of creativity and a lack of, flexibility, well, they had events and knowledge that were just packed into their slowly solidifying brain that led them to believe that maybe they weren't doing everything that they should do. Maybe they weren't as good as they should be or could be. All of those usual conflicts between reality and expectations. I mean, that whole scenario, that's the equivalent of having the disease. Now, skip ahead to a certain amount of time when a child turned adult has to make some decisions, and now they're left with a bad taste in their mouth. It doesn't matter that, they spent a lifetime acquiring knowledge. It doesn't matter how much critical thinking they apply to themselves to understand those facts. That little voice inside their head, that little concrete knowledge that they aren't good enough, and they're not doing what they should do, they're not doing what they could do, Maybe they're an imposter. Maybe they're a fraud. Guess which voice is going to be louder? That is the long version of the disease. Okay, I know this analogy is just a little bit weak, but trust me, the resolution is the same for both. Now, regardless of whether one suffers from imposter syndrome or if they have relationship expectations that they believe they could never live up to, or any of another 1,000 false beliefs, the long version of these problems, well, they're either based on what was imprinted on that person or what they have come to believe, come to assume is true, and have now made a basis for their permanent life plan. Now, take me, for instance. I have a YouTube channel. I have this podcast. I write articles on Medium and on Patreon on how to live a more focused and intentional life. I go forth and I live that intentional life in this converted school bus that I'm coming to you from. This is what I do. This is who I am, and yet I'm a complete imposter. I'm a complete fraud, or at least I've come to believe I am. Oh, that and I can't eat iceberg lettuce anymore. So we have finally come to those proverbial crossroads where we have to decide how we're going to react when the symptoms of that long ago disease return and infect our current reality. I mean, do we continue to order French fries in various establishments, hoping that some brand isn't going to have that taste that we want because, God damn it, we're going to eat French fries? Or do we step outside of ourselves and maybe invest in looking in new possibilities and opportunities? I'm personally really upset that I can't smoke cigars anymore. Yeah, I know it's a horrible habit. They're probably going to kill me, but they were also something I enjoyed so much. You cannot smoke a cigar fast. When you go out in the backyard and you light up that stogie, you got an hour to yourself to think, to ponder, to, I don't know, stare at YouTube or just look at your toes, but you are forced to slow down and it becomes enjoyable. It becomes a soul-enriching event through tobacco. I'm also really upset that all of the knowledge that I pack and continue to pack into my head, all of the critical thinking that I do to try to understand this world and the people that dwell within it, it's just the fact that I think I'm an imposter, that people are going to look at me and go, he has no idea what he's talking about. He's a fraud. That stupid little whispering voice in the back of my head that just continually tells me that I'm still a child and I'm not doing what I was taught. I'm doing something else, and it's bad. And so, we have choices. We can either complain, or we can dig ourselves out of a hole. And yeah, I know digging yourselves out of a hole doesn't work. Just work with me here. I mean, we can wallow in all of the things that happened to us in history past, or we can step outside of ourselves. We can seek some real new truth, and maybe start to believe in our futures. I mean, seek alternatives instead of just continually repeating, well, what doesn't work for us. Now, personally, I am going to find an alternative to that filthy cigar habit that I have that, well, sort of calms and unifies my soul. I don't know, maybe I'll start smoking a pipe like my grandfather, or find some other opportunity. Maybe I'll just drink more rum. There is an answer out there. And I am going to continue to eat the 10.5 million other foods that are out there that don't taste like rotting garbage. And I'm going to continue to try. And when I do stumble across one that doesn't taste really good, I'll just add it to the list and move on, because the number of things that I can eat without revulsion is so much greater than the smallest of things, well, that I really need to avoid. And finally, the big one is I am going to stop listening to those stupid little voices that are inside of my head. You know, the ones that continually telling me things that are not in my own voice, but are the voices of others. And see, this is what it has to do with long COVID, because bad things that happen in our past can have repercussions where we are right now. You see, it's our emotional and our mental responses to our here and now, to our own beliefs, that will define and help us move forward into the future. And French fries? I'm better off without them. And that whole imposter syndrome, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore either. And that whole long list, that myriad of supposed things that are holding me back, well, I think I'm going to kick them to the curb, because those were a disease in the past. And the long whatever that's happening now, it doesn't have any control over me. Not anymore. Thanks for listening.